Welcome to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I really do thank you for joining us here on the program as we come your way on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m. We're also on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. for a special edition of Tell Me Your Story. You be the judge of how special it is by listening to it. We also have podcasts at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeart, as well as Amazon Music. And we are also video casting on YouTube. And we have a YouTube channel. We also have a SoundCloud channel. The YouTube channel is, of course, Tell Me Your Story. Just look for the guy with the black hat. No, I'm not wearing it today, only because I'm wearing a headset for our interview today. Eventually, I'm going to shift over to some kind of an earbud that will give me the freedom to wear the hat. But in the meantime, in between time, we are going to jump into our guest. I have a few more announcements to make, but we're going to hold those until we have an opportunity to introduce to you our very special guests who are with us here on the program. And they are returning to our program, Dr. Elsbeth Meuth and Freddy Zental Weaver.
Yep, Zental Weaver.
Wonderful. It is great to have you back again. Oh, it's been a few years.
It's been a few, maybe
it's been 8 years.
Okay.
8? Oh, seriously?
Yes.
8 years. So because of the subject matter that we are going to be covering, you apparently you've made it through at least one of the 7-year itches.
Yeah, we've been doing this for 21 years now, Richard. 21.
Oh, wow. So you've been through 3 of those. I'm curious, is that really a thing?
Well, it could be a day by day. It doesn't have to be 7 years. It's moment by moment,
I hear you. You folks have, of course, an organization, a website, TantraNova.com is the website. And of course, you also have you have so many things in your life going on in that regard. And we hope that folks will check out. You have a book called Sexual Enlightenment, How to Create Lasting Fulfillment in Life, Love, and Intimacy. We were going to talk about that as well, but we're also going to talk about TantraNova, Creating Intimacy and Love, 10 Practices. I kind of joke with people about practice, especially in the medical field. It's like, well, when are you going to get it right? There's got to be a way. But that's the interesting, I suppose it can be a fun, intriguing, frustrating aspect of relationships, is that because you have 2 different people with totally different dynamics individually, when you come together as a couple, and of course, as many married people, or I should say counselors and what have you, ministers, pastors, et cetera, will say, when the 2 become one, there's a whole new dynamic there. And in my case, when one divorces from one dynamic, you go into another. In my current relationship, it's a totally different dynamic. And now there's a whole new learning curve and so forth. I take it that is still the case, but you folks have found not necessarily the cure, but can we say, in putting it in kind words, you've sort of found the treatment for helping people to work through the dynamic.
Well, it's really, Richard, it's like, right. In relationship, we bring, 2 different people, and we bring everything from all of everything we've ever experienced into that relationship. And, it starts out with loving, each other so deeply. And then we start to come out of our emotional, Sunday morning meeting clothes, right? And then we start getting into stuff that we don't even see, little irritations about the other person that really come from perhaps our position in the family or something that happened at some point in our life. But what's possible and what we share with people is to live into what we can imagine to be. And from that place, we can start to let go of all of the neurosynaptic, physical, emotional story that we carry with us, that we live forward unconsciously.
Yeah, and that's the other aspect of it, isn't it? It's unconscious. We aren't even aware sometimes that we're doing it. until somebody calls us on it or what have you. We're going through the motions that we picked up, maybe even from childhood, right?
Yeah.
So that is really a great point here. Instead of calling it treatment, I would call it cultivating awareness, because whenever we cultivate awareness, new vistas are possible. If I just like what you call being unconscious, there is nothing new to be seen, because it's like a veil I have in front of me and I cannot really see what's happening out there. So I would say that is really how our work, impacts people, and also why we may have a great success rate with both couples and singles in creating new lives in love and intimacy, both emotional and sexual intimacy. So by, shifting from a flat world into a round world, as an analogy, is that in the flat world, I cannot even conceive that I could sail around the world. It's not possible. I also cannot even fathom that I could learn skills to build a boat. There's no need for it. I'm actually afraid that if I walk to the edge of the world, I fall off. So if we keep with this analogy, it's like we support people, we guide people to shift out of a flat world of how they look at love, how they are making love, how they are connecting in love or not, from a flat to a round world. And then in the round world, there's lots is possible. You can sail around the world, you can meet new, peoples, and very exciting.
Let me ask you about the definition of, and I realize this is A, a loaded question, and B, a huge answer, just from what I know. What is lovemaking?
Mm-hmm. Well, lovemaking is something that we're all kind of limbically wired to do to procreate the species. And then there's the aspect of the sexual energetic awakening, which is what we experience, which keeps us coming together, which is the pleasure, the intimacy, the euphoric sense of rapture, the altered state of awareness, and all that's built into what happens chemically, endorphin, serotonin, oxytocin, the feel-good hormones that get released. So we're in an altered state, and then also that energy, it creates life. It's the most creative thing in the universe, at least for as far as we're concerned, because without it, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
So what we're working with really, Richard, are the aspects of the sexual piece as it relates to our intimacy and our connection. And they're in our workshops, they're actionable processes that people go through, that they get, actionable insights. But like you can get that a lot of places, but what we do and what's different is that when you are in the sexual piece, whether you're doing consciousness work or not, we're more, again, open, loving, vulnerable, receptive. And so in that place, with distinctions that we teach and an intention, like I want to stop arguing with my wife, or I want to create a beloved, or whatever, work that's fulfilling, or a place that's inspiring, whatever it might be, coming from that there's nothing out there but ourselves keeping us from allowing that to be so. We start to see the energetic piece, the stories that we make, and we can start to let go of how that total felt sense of that story keeps us from actualizing what we most deeply desire.
Yeah, so lovemaking really has to do with tuning with our energetic self, because after all, sexual energy is energy. Orgasm is the sensation of that energy. Emotion is pure energy. And then our thoughts and narratives that are all part how I may not only feel about Freddy, but also my thoughts about Freddy, and how we connect all, plays together. So given that none of us has learned to create love and intimacy consciously, most of us have fallen in love, and but the thing is that when I fall in love, it may feel wonderful, but I don't know what I did when I fell in love, so I cannot replicate it. And given that I struggled quite a bit in my own life around relationship and love, when we came together as beloveds and then also as business partners, we got very clear that we wanted to create a school where people can come and learn about how to create intimacy and love. And there are three dimensions we want to start tuning with, become aware of. The first one is the physical sexual. The second one is the heart and the love self, the emotional. And the third one is the mental, the thought, and the spiritual or consciousness self. And in the tantric practice, you know, TantraNova, we are the new tantra, so to speak. In the tantric practice, at the very core is becoming aware of energy. Tantra yoga is the yoga of the energetic body, unlike Hatha yoga, which is the yoga of the physical body, which most of people in the West know about, the yoga of the physical body. Most people in the West don't know about the yoga of the energetic body, which is Tantra. And so in that tantric energetic learning, we learn how energy shows up in our physical self, in our emotional self, in our spiritual self. And then we learn, because once we are coherent in these three dimensions and they flow and communicate with each other, then we can flow and communicate with another, like heart to heart, you know, or third eye to third eye.
Have to get a little when you can, you know, Richard.
It's absolutely. Go ahead.
The same also learning that our sexual centers start, you know, moving, circulating energetically with each other. Now, all of that needs to be practiced, and we need to do our solar work. And then we want to do I don't want to call it work, because it's a practice that is so
organic,
and enlivening, enjoyable. And then we can, you know, the energy then can flow between the two of us and back to lovemaking. That is where lovemaking can become bliss.
What's the difference between lovemaking and intimacy?
Well, you know, lovemaking gets confused with, you know, lust, selfish love, pornography, just quickies in the morning, unconsciously falling into this, you know, natural state of bliss. And then in those few 3 seconds, we're like totally vulnerable, totally aware, totally in an altered state. And then we go back to the left brain thinking, you know, how was it for you? I don't know. It was better the last time, and we smoked a cigarette or whatever. So what we teach are how to really bring some of the practices of what we call the witness state of mind, where we're actually watching our stories and watching our energy, right? And really moving with our breath consciousness, with the natural, you know, energy that shows up in the sexual aliveness. And that can be really an awakening that is, it's like a spiritual experience for people.
Mm-hmm.
It really is different. I mean, you know, because you sort of stumble upon it in the sex, you know, so just having sex and then, wow, this thing is just so great. And it's the physicality of it. So when we bring consciousness to the sexual, the creativity and pleasure start showing up, not just in the bedroom, but in all areas of our life, because the listening becomes so acute. We're starting to listen to the things that we think and how that cascades into what we call a total felt sense of the thought. We can start thinking about or start believing now what we want to create, as opposed to perhaps an old narrative story from lots of stuff for proof from the past that this could never happen because look at what happened in the past,
Mm-hmm.
you know, as opposed to being with all of that clay that we are, that remembers everything, the neurosynaptic stuff, the story, the emotional, and then live into. And that's kind of the magic of the work. I mean, you know, you've heard sex magic, but we don't use that word. And many people might listen to this and go, oh, well, you know, it sounds a little woo-woo, but what's really woo-woo, Richard, are single-celled amoebas, multi-celled organisms, and a universe that goes on forever. And that's our lineage.
Yeah. Well, this is a fascinating conversation. I've had these kinds of conversations over my lifetime. And one of the aspects that I'm very curious about is the aspect, especially in our time today, of the diminishment of the passion in one's life, especially when we have so many, I guess the best phrase to use or word would be so many distractions. So many things are happening in our world today that for many of us, it's hard to focus on that aspect of our lives if we are in a relationship with another human being. And it is, maybe this is stereotypical of people getting older, but usually the libido in both men and women, not always, but stereotypically declines. And yet there are, I've watched, for example, now I'm trying to remember the name of the TV show with Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda. Great program, love it. Where they're in their 70s or possibly even in their 80s, and they're still feeling that urge. And I don't know whether that's hormones, I don't know what it is. But then there are other people out in the real world who are not, they're not feeling that passion. They still love the person they're with. They still care about the person they're with. They still want to be with the person they're with, but they can't be, if I may borrow this phrase, all they can be to that person. And that person is no longer feeling that connection from them, that passion from them. Are you seeing that happening in our world, in this country, and there in Chicago with people you work with today?
So, I mean, you have, two people sitting in front of you who are not spring chickens anymore. I'm 72, turning 73 in a couple of months. And Freddy?
I'll be 66 at the end of this week.
Okay.
So we consciously cultivate our aliveness. And when I speak about aliveness, we want to pay attention to our physical body, yes, and hormones are a big part of that. I think the passion you were talking about also involves the physical passion. And so, it may be good when we are over 50, 55 to actually consider to support the physical body in that way, because the hormones decrease. It's just part of, the life cycle. The other thing is that passion is also, like what I said earlier, heart to heart, that can be tremendous passion. Like for me, passion in my relationship with Freddy has to do with my passion for life.
Mm-hmm.
They are identical. Now, they are expressed perhaps in different dimensions, because I can be passionate about a new program we are creating, and that Freddy may not be in the foreground for that, but the quality, it comes from the same source.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to live a life where I wake up in the morning and I want to be in a state of mind where I, look out and say, this is worth living. This is what I want to get up to, even if I don't really know what's going to happen today. I may have a plan, but who knows? So it's like, what children have? They wake up in the morning and they jump on the bed. They are happy for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
They're just happy. And that is something I think which, as older people, so to speak, is something to cultivate, to connect with, the being curious, just the happiness about the little things.
Mm-hmm.
I want to add too, Richard, most of us are not really okay or totally comfortable with pleasure and happiness. We kind of learn to suffer, and then someday maybe we'll be happy when we retire or when we go on holiday. And as we get older, we've associated oftentimes happiness in relationship as it's got to be sexual, like it was when we were in our 30s or in our 20s or even our 40s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's never like it was. It's never like it's going to be. It's like it is. And most of us miss the isness because we're in our head analyzing the past or thinking about the future, and we're missing the moment. So it's in this, once we start bringing consciousness to the sexual, again, I mentioned this earlier, pleasure starts showing up as a default way of listening. It doesn't always show up as sexual. We could teach what we teach to nuns and priests if they were vowed to celibacy. It's about what that energy is as a feeling, and it doesn't always look like an act. And so once you tune into the act in a deeper way, once you get with the physicality of the act in a deeper way in terms of a sexual meditation, then that feeling starts to show up outside of the sexual physicality of that. It starts to show up as a feeling. So the listening in a conversation, the listening of, being, appreciative of your relationship, appreciative of your life, grateful for the air that you're breathing, that feeling, it trumps all of the other stuff about, it's not like it was, stuff that we do.
That's also a great thing that I learned from Freddy, actually. So Freddy grew up much more being encouraged by his dad to live in the moment and enjoy. As you can tell by my accent, I grew up in Germany, and it was much more categorical and strict and, straight and boxed in. So there are certain obligations and responsibilities I grew up with, and this is how I live my life. And I'm great at getting things done, but I may miss the joy in it. And what I learned from Freddy is you always say, not only to me, but do something every day. Say this, that.
Yeah, no, my father used to tell me this. He was a psychiatrist. He recently passed away about 3 months ago. And you would have loved to have had him on your show. He was really a far out, beautiful guy. But he used to always say, son, do something every day that you love for no other reason except you love to do it. It feels good.
Yeah.
It's gardening, a walk, working out, riding your motorcycle, whatever it might be. And that really helps you remember your joy and your happiness. And again, most of us are not there. We're like, I'll put that off because I've got to do this. I've got to, we've got to get the checklist and all of that, which is good. And it has its place, no doubt. Yet I think that's kind of what happens for a lot of people is they get sort of caught in that spiral, that downward spiral.
I heard a study that had been done specifically regarding men and work. And this was actually on the country station that I happened to listen to. It's a syndicated show. And this young man, he's reading this study. And he said that the study has shown that that men were asked to prioritize the parts of their lives. And so I guess it was a psychologist who kind of put this together. In any event, work was, and again, this was not, I hate going to work on Monday morning and I can't wait till Friday. No. This is, they're doing a job that, just like you described, Freddy, that they love doing. I have a job. I personally, Richard Dugan has a job I love doing. Today, when the day of our interview, I took a look at my schedule. Every single hour of my day had something in it. And now when I looked at the calendar prior to starting the day, I'm going, oh my God, what a day I've got ahead of me. But once I started into it, once I got into it, it was like, all right, here we go. Let's do this thing. Let's have some fun. And you folks are sort of at the end of that day. And I have been looking forward, of course, to this conversation with the two of you. But this study, to get back to that, said that that men should actually have work that they love doing as their number one priority for this reason. They will take that energy, that enthusiasm, that excitement, that feeling of accomplishment home to the family, to the wife, and that then begins that process. Now, here's the flip side of that. If a man has that, and does bring that home, and he doesn't have a partner who is supportive of that, and a matter of fact, doesn't like the fact that he loves his job, and you got a problem, a really big problem, because it's like, I'm not asking, okay, the man is not asking for the wife to jump on board and say, oh, hey, fantastic. No, but just to say, oh, wonderful. I'm glad you had a great, I mean, at the very least, being neutral rather than, I hate the fact that you love your job kind of thing. It's kind of the energy that comes back. What are your thoughts in that regard, as opposed to the religious philosophy, especially in this country of Christianity, that says, no, 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 no. You put God first. And I'm thinking, yeah, but God's the one that created me to do this. I'm doing my life's purpose. So from my perspective, God and job are united, and they are first.
Well, let me just comment on that, Richard. So if I'm in a relationship and there is a complaint, a consistent complaint from the other side, I want to listen to that. And I want to look at what we do to shift that. So it might be work less, it might be more vacation, it might be whatever. I mean, negotiate it, and that's the thing, is because we get stuck in our positions, and then we get stuck in giving up all our power. Like, I would feel better if you stopped loving your work. Well, my discontent has nothing to do with your work and you loving your work. There's something going on over here if I've got the complaint. So the first thing for all of us to do is to own our upsets. And this is all part of the work that we do in our workshops as well. These are actionable insights, but to do that really does require developing this witness state of mind, because this stuff is so deeply wired that I'm affected by I'd feel better if the weather were better. I can't change the weather, but I can really change how I feel about it.
So really, I think this is such a great example here that you brought, because in relationship, you spoke about the 7-year itch and so forth. We had our moments in our relationship over the last 21 years. It's just part of the evolution of relationship. And one big dimension, I have been taking away is to come to live my life in a state of appreciation. So, which of course starts with myself. And given that you had this couple where you spoke about the man and then the woman who may have the complaint, it is like there is a tendency, women are so detail oriented, and they see what's missing, which on one hand is great in the long run if you want to, open something up and shift. But often how it's expressed, and I include myself there, is that it comes out as a criticism. So my learning has been to actually always look first where the glass is half full instead of half empty. So when Freddy comes home, having done the grocery shopping, and then, he didn't bring the right pate, the one I like, he didn't bring it. And I say, oh no, I don't like the pate he brought, So instead of letting myself go there, I say, oh darling, thank you so much for bringing the pate. Thank you. And then he may say, I couldn't find the right one. Very different than if I had jumped on him. What? You didn't bring me the right pate? Because men, when they get criticized, what happens is their testosterone drops.
Or it can go the other way. Testosterone goes up and then it's a fight.
No, that may be a reaction then. When you get criticized, then first is that you go back into your shell. You may then attack at some point. But the thing is, the point I want to make is that for many women, I would say, because we work with a lot of women, so I see it over and over again, is to and the work needs to start over here. And it starts with me appreciating myself, like in life, in what I do, instead of being so critical, and reminding myself when Freddy does something for me, the first step is to be appreciative of what he did, the effort he put into it, the time he spent, all of that. Then the space is open, and then whatever he wants to say, he can say. But that it requires consciousness and willingness to learn and to shift on both sides.
Yeah. The one challenge, of course, is getting both sides to want to change. And I know that even myself, there are spaces in my life where I feel great. I feel fine. I don't need to be fixed. I don't need therapy, in spite of the fact that I call these programs my therapy, because I get a lot of insight from my guests, you folks included. And I'm not saying that I am perfect in that context. I am perfect because I am, period. That's how I am perfect. Now, I would throw my 2 cents to that example that you used. When I come home and I didn't get the right thing, and of course now in this day and age with smartphones and all this kind of stuff, I would usually call and say, okay, they don't have that particular brand or that particular type. What would you have me get? And usually it's, well, it's okay, whatever they have. Or if I didn't call and I come home, I'm not going to say I fess up. I share immediately. Okay, I didn't get the right cream cheese. I got this brand instead of that brand. And she usually my wife in this case, usually responds with, hey, don't worry about it. It's okay. Because at least we have cream cheese. May not be exactly what you wanted, but what she wanted, but at least now she can continue with the recipe and so forth. So those are the kinds of things that I look at from my perspective. I've been through a number of personal growth programs, and I'm wondering, do you folks put on what I would call intensives? The intensive that I think of is 3 nights, like a Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, then all day Saturday, all day Sunday. I went through a program called Life Spring back in 1980.
Oh yeah, I remember Life Spring. Sure.
Yeah. And it was a great experience. And then in Arizona, in Phoenix, there was a program called Delta Vector, and then they changed the name to Omega Vector. It was kind of focused on the 0 point initially, but it took in many different ancient wisdom teachings from so many different sources. Especially, I loved that when George Adair, the founder, he has since passed, unfortunately, but he did a program all on the Hebrew alphabet or Aleph Bet. And he talked about each character, not so much all 22, but in collectively, saying, did you know that every single letter of the Hebrew alphabet has its own legend? It has its own numerical reference. It has its own vibration and tone and color and in manner and story, for that matter, or in this case, like legend. Then you start putting the letters together into words and you get a whole new legend. Words into sentences, into paragraphs, into chapters, into books. And that's why I've often said too, not only words have power, but also the loss of information and context through translation. So it's like, boy, I wish that I could have learned other languages when I was going to school. I knew a gal who went through grade school and high school in Italy. She came here to the States where she lives now. She learned 5 languages in Italy and then has learned 3 more. And it's just incredible what she's accomplished. But that's kind of almost the way each one of us is. We're each one a different letter in the human alphabet. And we each have our own legend, our own story, but we all have the same emotions, right? How do you help people to in these dynamics, these dyads as they are called in these programs? How do you help them to see not the flaws in someone else, but their uniqueness, their individual aspect, as well as their similarity to the person in that dyad, in that relationship, who has exactly the same emotions, but a different story.
Yeah, so may I take?
Please, we both got a lot to say on that one. Take it, please.
So, in our work, which the approaches you described, what they don't include is the sexual. So over the last 50 years, a lot has changed in the West. And there are a couple of aspects that made a huge difference through these transformation programs, some you just described, and there are many more out there. Also through therapy, what has opened up in the Western way of being is that we are more open to feel and acknowledge our feelings. When you went to therapy, like in the 1950s in the United States, you were considered being crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Today, it's like, many people go to their therapist once a week or once a month, just as a, tune-up, as setting their head straight and so forth. But the good part of that is really that the whole emotional dimension has been more acknowledged and it's no longer so obscured. The other aspect is that having meditation and yoga having come from the East to the West, and I'm including Europe here too, because it's very similar as the United States, we have become more, contemplative. I'm not saying that we are always contemplating, but, as a possibility, as a way of tuning with myself. So we locate the meditative part more in the consciousness, the crown center, the emotional here in the heart center. However, I'm not aware of any other approach than like the tantric work that includes the sexual dimension as an active part of transformation. It's the most, unconscious part of humankind.
Yeah, in our book, Sexual Enlightenment, we mentioned a chapter in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill's book, written like in 1938 or whenever it was.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about the person that can transmute sexual energy has a better opportunity to get rich in their plan to however they're going to do it. So learning to use sexual energy as a way of getting past whatever might be the block in a relationship or in your work that you want to create or whatever happiness or fulfillment can really shift. So that's something that's not taught in any of these programs, really, how to work with sexual.
So then back to that state of where each of us is perfect already. Something like that you brought out, at least that is what
perfection's in the perfecting.
No, each of us is perfect already, there's nothing missing. However, we may have forgotten that. So the question then of all transformational approaches is to come back to that perfection that each of us are. Mm-hmm. And we call it wholeness. And when we are in balance of these three dimensions of physical, sexual, emotional, love, and mental, spiritual, when we are no longer compartmentalized as we all become when we grow up, once we are flowing with these three dimensions, what opens up is a sense of wholeness. And when I feel whole, I feel fine. There is no criticism of self. There is no criticism of others, or, if someone has a criticism of me, I can be with it with grace, and it doesn't affect me because I can listen and say, what is this person seeing? But it's not like that it, has something to do with my wholeness. So that is how we approach, how we work with coming back to wholeness, coming back to that perfection. It starts with self. And then, of course, the relationship field is a wonderful field to practice that, because we get so easily triggered in the beloved relationship.
This is a question that, well, first of all, let me just say that when my first wife and I were experiencing some difficulties, we went to my parents. Now, my parents, as of our broadcast here, our podcast videocast, they've been married 65, going on 66 years this June of 2022. My father is 90, still alive, doing well. My mother is 87. And it just made sense to me back then, and we're now talking maybe 25, 30 years ago, to go to them. They were the ones that had the experience. So why wouldn't you go to people who have the experience? It's kind of like coming to you two for the experience, because you have that. What would you tell somebody who is struggling in this regard, especially in light of your book, Sexual Enlightenment, and of course, TantraNova and TantraNova.com, folks, which is the website.
TantraNova.
What did I say? Anyway, yes, TantraNova. I don't know what the heck I said, but anyway. I know what it was. It was a TV program, I remember.
That's right. That's right. It was a TV program.
You remember that one too? Yes, that was going back 65,000 years. Anyway, let's not go back that far. Let's just go back to finding someone. How important is it? And I want to say not a therapist, okay? Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with therapists, but finding someone like a mother, a father, I don't know, maybe a sibling if you're comfortable, because I know this subject that we're talking about is one that's very difficult for a lot of people to talk about, but finding some people who know you, who care about you, and who aren't necessarily going to take your side. I think that would be very unfair if they took your side over the other person in your relationship. That they say, you know what, you guys are better together, and yeah, I want to help. How about, what are your thoughts about trying to create some kind of a network like that? Because Freddy, it sounds like you had that in your life.
Well, I have it now with Elsbeth, and early I was lucky to have been raised with my father, who was very conscious oriented. He was a trained psychiatrist, and he was really dedicated to his own transformation and shifting out of suffering. Right. So the story, darling. The story of suffering. So, let me just say, when people come to do our work, they, Richard, have done an intake. So they've written down what they want to get out of the work. So usually people have a clear idea of what they want to create. And then in our work, what we do is not a lot of analysis. What we do is show them a way through practices and specific distinctions that we teach, and then ultimately working with the sexual energy with these distinctions, a way to be in the witness of all of their beliefs, to then move into what they most deeply desire. Because the stuff that's the belief stuff is from, I keep telling her to stop stepping on my foot, but she's always stepping on my foot. I can't stop her. I want her to stop stepping on my foot, but I know she won't stop stepping on my foot because she's always been stepping on my foot, but I want her to stop, so getting as an example, but people to learn to let go of our beliefs through this deep experience and this altered state of consciousness that happens in the sexual with specific distinctions. It's like a sexual meditation with intention. And the coupling of those two things really allows people to get more deeply connected to their story making around their own suffering, because this stuff is just a belief that something, not to diminish what might have happened in an abusive situation, yet in the moment, anything is possible.
Yeah. So you want to, when you struggle in relationship, whoever is listening, and if there's a struggle in relationship, or often what also happens is that people come to us, they're struggling with finding the relationship. the beloved. So it doesn't matter where you are on in what moment in life you may struggle. But the thing is that you want to find someone who has gone the path before and has cleared whatever is there to be cleared and is now successful or lives the life that you would like to live, So this could be a sister. This could be, like we have coaches in sports for that very reason, because the coach is a guide that shows the player what the player cannot see, the blind spot.
Mm-hmm.
So once we can reveal the blind spot, then we have a new view. And so, like for me in my own life, that was even before Freddy. I was, a management consultant in the 90s, and I was really good in my work, but I was miserable in relationship. And I had this pattern of attracting unavailable men. And while that was exciting at times, most of the time it was alone.
Mm.
So there came this very distinct moment when I felt very despaired, because I could see the trajectory that if I was not going to change something, I would end up without lasting intimacy and love in my life before I leave this planet. And I didn't want that. So I put myself on a path, which was first delving deeply into meditation and then studying Tantra as a discipline, not just reading a book here and there. And Richard, what opened up for me out of it in this very deep sexual healing practice was that I was thrown back into a memory of when I was 18 years old. It didn't come from here. No, it was through the access through my body that I was reminded of that. I was 18 years old, first boyfriend, first love, and he asked me to have intercourse, although the 2 years before that were very blissful, and I was not ready for intercourse. I said yes. It was extremely painful. I had to go to the gynecologist, and the bill came to my house. My dad opened it, all hell broke loose. He called me a whore. The boyfriend left, a few weeks later, and there I was totally alone, no one to turn to. And that was the moment when I closed off. Also, I made this nanosecond decision, which was like, men are never there for you when you need them. And that trailed me throughout my life to the moment, which was like 30 years later. It took me quite a while. I had done therapy around it, which was great. But in talk therapy, we still go through the linguistic dimension of our being that cannot necessarily tap into the subconscious. And in the tantric practice and the work, when I connected through my body, through my energies, there are very particular practices that can lead us to that place, that when the valve opened and all that pain from that 18-year-old physical and emotional came back, but it was also the moment when it could get released. And what I had not known was that I had held memory on the cellular level in my body. And by clearing that, we can really clear the past, so to speak. And then 6 months later, Freddy came into my life and he was available. And if I hadn't done that clearing work, I would not have recognized him. I would have seen him, but I would not have recognized him, because he didn't fit the pattern of unavailability that I was prone to follow. So I just want to say that the shifting happens in ways, again, where we access these different dimensions. And that is what I want to harken back to, which is the psychosexual dimension is the dimension that is the least explored, that, however, that has tremendous potential, not only for healing, but also for coming to this passion that you spoke about earlier.
Psychosomatically, we've got to get to that stuff. It's not just analytical, in our, stories. It's good to understand. Yet, how does this stuff live energetically for us? And Elsbeth's example is a great example of really what this work does and unlocks for people, because there's a deep story, a deep decision that people make around their suffering. And so when we really start to get in touch with that, we can start to then move into a new possibility. And it's not just getting it here. It's about being able to be still enough as a witness to all of the total felt sense of the cascading physical, what appears to be our only reality, to then be able to slowly move in what I call, we flatten the experience. And Elsbeth flattened it, because even though she got it in therapy, oh, thank you for helping me understand why I create this unavailable man thing, she would still unconsciously and unwittingly create relationships that were doomed to fail, like they were already in another relationship. Yeah. So that she could be right about being wrong about being right about there's no good men, but that's just an example of what we do everywhere, all of us. And so to get to that stuff, that deep stuff that keeps us from allowing in what we most deeply desire, sexual meditation, and this process is really quite effective.
Yeah, and Richard, it's very different to speak about something. We are still here. Like in talk therapy, we may speak about our sexual struggles, but we talk about it instead of what we call learning in action, where we experience it in the moment. Now, it's not that there is, there's no nudity or intimate activity in our workshops in that sense. These are homework practices.
We've designed it that way intentionally.
But the 3-day workshop retreats are designed to, go deeper into the subconscious. And there's processes we guide people through so they can access their subconscious, and then these sexual healing rituals where there's one dedicated to the woman and one dedicated to the man, they then open up a space in an experiential way, not just in a linguistic way.
This next question, the thought came to me that I'm going to ask a question that is very primeval or primitive, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is this and this question is, I'm going to say somewhat stereotypical, maybe. Is a woman's orgasm her responsibility? And likewise, is a man's orgasm exclusively his responsibility?
Well, Richard, this is good. I've never met a man that hasn't had an orgasm. Yet there are a lot of women who've never experienced an orgasm. And a lot of that is social training and modeling, where a woman is considered a whore if she likes sex, and a woman could still be stoned to death for having sex out of wedlock in some parts of the world. Whereas a man, on the other hand, we've had harems, you're a playboy, we're lauded for our sexual prowess, you're a man, the first time you have sex, first erection, look, ma, no hands, and, as grownups, men, we're run by our little head our whole life. So, for women, it's really about owning their sexuality, because a woman can way outdo a man sexually once their energy gets flowing. Whereas a man, what our work is about is becoming more conscious of our unconscious proclivity to want to be in more of a lusting state, because that's where we start to feel. So in the work that we teach, people learn, men and women, they learn the distinctions of how to recognize how their energy shows up, the emotional connection of how it has been or hasn't been.
Yeah, so there are a couple of dimensions I think your question is holding. Let's first do the feminine masculine, and then in terms of who's responsible for one's orgasm. Yeah. So because what I'm saying now about masculine energy, sexual energy, and feminine sexual energy plays into that as well. So male sexual energy is based in testosterone. We also call it the quick hormone. It rises quickly, gets easily excited, and then drops quickly. Feminine sexual energy is slow. It's based in estrogen. We call it the slow hormone. Don't know if it's coming or going. However, when it gets awakened, it can come up on a plateau and then stay on that plateau for a long, long time. Multiple orgasms, orgasmic waves. So the opportunity and challenge is very different for the men and for the woman. Now, this is not just about heterosexual people.
Mhm.
The same shows up in any same-sex relationship or bisexual relationship or transgender, because there's always this like that testosterone estrogen dynamic, or masculine feminine, or taking it out of the gender realm, we can just call it yin and yang. That's a polarity, and without that polarity there is no magnetism. So if there are two masculines together, they're just like this. They are two
like repelling almost each other. Like,
yeah.
Mhm.
And if there are two yin feminine, they are just like, all over like this, because
Yeah.
feminine energy is circular, moving, flowing, all of that, and masculine is directional, protruding, linear. So they complement each other beautifully, the two of them.
Mm.
But that's where we want to be in the one who is in the masculine wants to be in his masculine and cultivate that. And she wants to open up to be more in her feminine.
That raises the next question in terms of, well, actually, it's more of a statement I'd like you to respond to. And this was actually said to me by a therapist. A man cannot fake it. A woman can.
You mean the orgasm?
The orgasm, the passion, the excitement. In other words, a man cannot fake an erection. A woman can fake feeling the pleasure during intercourse.
She cannot fake really her physiological reactions. If a man is attuned to a woman, he knows, because the labia of a woman are just like the penis.
they swell, they get moist.
Yeah. So you cannot really fake. You cannot fake. You can play an act as a woman. Yes, you can. But physiologically, no, you cannot fake it.
So then the next question that is interesting, that it was after it actually came to follow the first question I just asked you about the other thing. And that is, how beneficial or damaging is, and I'm going to use the term here because there are many different other names for it, Viagra, the ED pill. How beneficial / dangerous is it to a relationship?
I don't think it's dangerous at all if someone chooses to use it. Actually, they found that Viagra once a day can stave off men's getting old in their brain. So that's dementia, right? Exactly. So because it opens the capillaries, it helps the blood flow and oxygenation. So that's a reason to take it. And the erections are just a nice little byproduct. The first question that you mentioned, or the statement from the therapist or whoever who said that, a man might not be able to fake a physiological as well as a woman might be able to. And even if a woman is dry, she can use lubricants. But a man has an erection, but he can still fake the emotional piece.
Yeah.
He can fake an orgasm, he can fake it, but what happens for a lot of people, even when they are both highly aroused, showing intimacy is scary for people because it's a Machiavellian world and people are not accustomed to just being seen and being, particularly guys. There's two emotions that are okay for guys. That's fucking and fighting. Other than that, we are trained not to show our hand, not to cry. We fight on the gridiron. We kill each other in war. And that's about the only time we can pat each other on the butt or give each other a hug after we've been killing each other one way or the other. So once we start to broaden that emotional possibility, we start to become more connected to our sexual pleasure, and we can, not if we aren't feeling it, say I'm not feeling this, or not. Let it be seen that I'm not that emotionally involved right now. It doesn't mean we're going to break up our relationship. That's the way it is right now.
Yeah.
To be with what is really what the opportunity is in terms of our lives, because we miss so much with what we're supposed to do and what we were modeled to do and what we think is right and wrong, and we miss creating a relationship the way it works for the two of you. Or for yourself.
Yeah.
And we miss a lot of our life.
And I also think, Richard, that our culture is very much performance oriented.
Thank you.
Yeah, which actually misses the ether, like that intimate connection, like men when they grow 50, 60 and older, erection is often a problem. And then when they come to us, what they are learning is to tune with their sexual center in a new way.
The soft on.
And become much more sensitive to nuances. And again, what Freddy just alluded to, like opening their heart to themselves. And then if they have a partner in their life with a partner, or if they are dating, to so that again, the connection of the sex with the heart is so essential, because there it becomes more like a symphony instead of, oh, I have to get an erection now in order to count, or I'm still good enough, or I feel myself in that way. So there are many other dimensions available if the man is open to tune with that. And, and a man doesn't need an erection to satisfy a woman. That's like an illusion.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways,
Yeah. Actually, it starts at the heart.
Yeah.
It starts at the heart, and men learn that. We do. Elsbeth teaches a women's workshop. I teach a men's workshop. Most of our workshops are co-ed, but in the men's workshop, one of their practices is to learn how to transmute or move what I call this orgasmic nectar from the second chakra, the sexual center, up to the heart. And that's with breath and awareness and muscle awareness. And guys start on the practice of learning to do that. And once they do, they can start to connect better with their female counterpart.
I think that something you just said, Elsbeth, is something people need to hear again. And that is that our society here in the West is performance oriented. I've got to achieve something. And even when I was in my late 30s, 40s, and 50s, I hated that. It's like, why can't we just be here now? And what was there was a phrase you talked about, Freddy, about being in this moment right here, right now, in terms of our intimacy, our lovemaking, our passion, et cetera, and not thinking about all of that other stuff that's out there that we've been told, oh no, this is what you're supposed to do, and this is how it works, and this is the way it goes, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, the isness of what is, and that's really a practice, because the mind's not going to stop talking to you. It just, and learning how to watch the thoughts without totally buying into everything that comes across our radar, like, oh, it's a squirrel, is really an important practice for all of us, because that's the quantum. That's when we can really start to create something that we've never done before, or something that we most deeply desire, outside of the box of what we know as our experience, as we think is the only truth.
Yeah. Now, you folks have been holding these workshops and seminars. Have you started again in gatherings yet?
Oh, yes, we started a year ago.
Okay. And I'm curious as to the demeanor of folks participating in light of what we have been going through specifically in the last 2, and some might even say it looks like we're heading into year number 3. But again, this kind of goes back to what I said at the front end of the program about all those distractions that get in the way. There's a great line from a song that John Denver sang once, and he's one of my favorite artists. And it's blow up your TV, throw away your newspaper, move to the country and build you a home, have a lot of children, plant a bunch of peaches, try and find Jesus on your own. And I'm wondering if maybe that's what we need to do is blow up the TV, throw away the paper, and just disconnect from all of this stuff, because we know, sadly, of man's inhumanity to man. We need to focus on our heart-to-heart connection with our partner.
Yeah. Think globally, but act locally, and, we don't have to blow anything up. We can just do that at any moment. We can do that at any moment, we can start to go inside and get still and have a regular practice that does that and allows that accessibility.
Yeah, that is really, so we just recently had a couple come to us who struggle in their relationship, both intimately and sexually. They love each other very much. And so they came for the first session, and I had a tremendous opening by doing a practice that we guided them through, which is a bodywork partner practice that is designed to cultivate emotional intimacy. And she was the receiver, he was the giver. And it was that full attention in her share after the practice. There were tears and the hearts were open. And it was the attention he gave her, undivided attention. And it's the feeling of that, being held, and she knew he was there for her. Just like what you said, like this, just being fully there and no distraction. And we want to cultivate that, and we want to cultivate through daily practice with ourselves so that our mind and our heart become connected. And then we want to have daily practices in relationship. So Freddy and I, we have certain practices we do every day. We call them Gentry Quickies. They are not about having sex. However, they are about connecting intimately. And I may be sitting at the computer working away and be totally involved in something. Freddy may come over and he's doing this.
And I might do something like this, just front and back. And then she stops what she's doing, and then we breathe together. And it doesn't have to be more than a few minutes, 5 or 6, 10 breaths, and those few moments of just letting the thoughts go is what you were saying, blowing things up. That's just blowing up the TV, that's blowing up the busy. And then you get right back to whatever you were doing, but you go back to it with a renewed sense of,
yes, and
stillness.
It's like a recalibration within and with each other. Now, to be very clear, Freddy and I have an agreement there. Without agreement, it won't work in couplehood, because there may be moments, maybe a moment when I'm so busy and I'm
on the phone right now.
No, I don't mean that, but like, I may still be busy, but given that I made the agreement with Freddy, when he comes to me, which also goes the other way around when I come to him, and he holds me, that we both drop into this moment together. And the breath is the guide that assists us in dropping into the present moment and into the presence of each other.
I got a sidebar question here for you, Elsbeth, as well as you, Freddy. What do you think of his hairdo? How long have you had it, Freddy? And does it play any role in your I'm going to put it this way, your togetherness?
You mean this?
You mean my bald head?
That lovely, shiny, lovely bald head of yours. You and I have the same barber.
Yeah, right. I have a full head of hair. I'm like all gray, and for me, the reason I was actually thinking today that I might let it grow out, but it's a drama. When you have hair, you have to take care of it. You have to trim it. You have to put whatever lotions in it, or VO5, with a beard, same thing, so it's just I just every other day I just, and it's done, it just makes it simple.
And for me, a very sexy head.
Well, Well,
She liked my head. Well, that's another plus, I guess.
well, back in 2001, when my present wife, went through her cancer treatment and is just fine today, 22 years later, 21 years later, I said, I'm going to shave my head. Now, I had long hair and a ponytail. By the way, I still have that ponytail. It's just in a box, all braided up. And I said, I'm going to do this, and let's do it together, because she thought she was going to lose all of her hair with the chemo. The day we were to do it, she found out the chemo she was going to be given was not going to cause her to lose all her hair. It would cause her hair to thin, but not be lost. So she backed out. I said, I'm still doing it. I'm still doing this for you. And I've been doing it ever since. And I'll be honest with you, the day after, I could still feel wisps of hair flying around in my face when I was driving with the window open. And I had no hair on my head. So it was phantom hair. But it was for me, it was not only an opportunity to try something different. And I mean, it was really different, especially when my parents saw me. But it was a way for me back 21 years ago to say, look, I'm glad that you made the decision to live. And that was, by the way, another question that I asked her just before she went into surgery. Do you want to live or do you want to die? I may not like your choice, but I'll support you in whatever that choice is. And this was my support, because she chose to live. I may have shaved it anyway if she had chosen not to do anything. But I think that each one of us, I guess, in relationships, and we have all kinds of relationships, and I know we're talking more about the intimate relationships. We need to find ways. And I guess am I correct that women tend to keep score? Guys don't usually do that. In other words, okay, well, you've done this and this and this for me. Or is it more, what have you done for me lately?
I don't know if there's any one, cookie cutter fits all.
You keep going.
I think it's nice to feel like there's a reciprocation in the giving and receiving. Like, for instance, tonight, Elsbeth did the shopping, and it was a beautiful day. We're kind of like beginning of spring, and I've uncovered the barbecue, and I said, well, I'll barbecue some food, And so she bought back some things to barbecue, and I barbecued them and had the dinner all set up, and then she disappeared. She went up to do work, and I didn't go get her. I just waited a while, and then I just ate. And I felt a little, because she usually cooks breakfast in the morning, and I'm always there, and it's like our time that we spend. And I felt a little slighted, that she didn't, come down and sit with me and spend that time. And I felt it, but I didn't say anything, So I don't know if that's keeping score. It was just kind of something I wanted, and then I let go of it. And so.
Well, I've often wanted to ask my parents. My father, he's 90 and a half. He'll be 91 in August. And he's not real happy with his body right now, because it's not the way he would like it maybe when he was 70, because he has some stability issues, that kind of thing. And so my mother's dealing with that negativity from him. But the question that I would like to ask, but I probably won't, just out of respect, is there anything, and I might ask this separately of them, is there anything that your spouse has done during your marriage that you have not forgiven them for? And it seems to me, and this is kind of where I'm coming from, when it comes to a challenge that was put to me, they said to me, well, what about all the mistakes you've made? And I told them where this came from. At first, I did not know, but I said, I've never made any mistakes in my life. Not one. What I've had are life lessons or learning experiences. Now, when you put it in that context, where is there the need for even self-forgiveness? So if I look at other people in the same context, I don't need to forgive that other person in the relationship for what they did, because that's just them trying to learn how to be whatever way that is that they're to be. Now, granted, I would venture most people can't stay in that state of mind and consciousness for very long. But it just seems to me that that's kind of where we need to go and say, look, I'm here learning and you're here learning. Okay, we're not trying to hurt each other. That is not our intent. We might, cause offense, but it's never our intent. It's just because we become unconscious and we react as opposed to act. What are your thoughts in that regard to forgiveness, especially in a relationship?
Yeah, I'm totally vibing with you in terms of that when we look at it, what is there for me to be seen and to be learned? What was there for me to be seen and to be learned, just as it was for the other? One part, and then forgiveness is like, it's the forgiving lives in that, holding it like that, you don't, that we don't hold it something against the other.
Right.
It is really essential. If you bring it up over and over again, when there may be a breakdown or something is not working the way you hoped or the partner hoped, and then you say, you do this all the time, you did it 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, and I cannot trust you anymore. No, trust is not digging up stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and keep making the other wrong. It's really, okay, this happened. It's complete. And then living my life accordingly so that I never, ever bring it up.
Yeah.
It's an inside job because we may have deep wounds that were caused by situations with people in our lives today. And then in a moment of vulnerability or anger, we might blurt something out at them and they might take it on or not take it on. But the bottom line is, if it's my issue, it's my issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we all got to own our own stuff. And the opportunity to let go of that stuff is the opportunity, because this is short life, man. Love is the way.
Yeah, love is the way. And that is what we've been talking about here on this program. Love is the way. And another way is to go to the website. And it's not what I said earlier. It's TantraNova.com. TantraNova.com. You can find out more about TantraNova as well as their latest book, which is now Audible, called Sexual Enlightenment: How to Create It's Lasting Fulfillment in Life, Love, and Intimacy. And I like that, the word fulfillment. It rings much more true than trying to, quote unquote, fix your relationship. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I have to say that in spite of the fact that I went through a divorce with my first wife, there wasn't anything to fix. We learned a lot. I learned a lot. And I carried that on into my present marriage. And I made a commitment to her as well as to myself. I would never do that again. Never. Because if I did, I would never get into another relationship. I'm saying, no. I learned my lesson the first time. It was too damn painful the first time. I hated the fact that we ended up splitting, because in spite of the fact that we were together for 15 years, the majority of those 15 years were pretty damn cool. We had a lot of fun. And I think that that's what people forget it's that whole thing of keeping score deal. When you're going through a divorce, it's like, well, yeah, well, you did this and you did that, you did the other. Yeah, but what about the fun we had? What about the places that we went and the things that we did, and the fun and the joy and the happiness and excitement? Doesn't that mean anything? And it just seems to me, Elsbeth and Freddy, that people put so much time and energy into a relationship, and they don't think about that when they're in the process of, for a better word, destroying it.
Mm-hmm.
So I thank the two of you for being with us here on the program. I want to remind our listeners, we're talking to Elsbeth Meuth and Freddy Weaver, who we're talking about the work that they do through TantraNova.com. We will be linked to your website too, by the way. I want you to know that, so that folks can go to your website and find out more about the work you're doing.
Oh, thank
really
you.
Exciting. Really great. Thank you for having us on your platform, your show tonight.
Well, I hope that we can have you back again to talk more, because I know that there's another pandemic wave coming, and it's not a variant. Okay, it's the mental health pandemic that has already begun. Actually, they're talking about it now, and that's the reason I was asking about networks, about family and friends. And granted, all of us are affected in different ways by what we've been going through the last couple of years. And just the mental stress, let alone physical and emotional stress of folks losing loved ones left and right. How sad. I often think of it from the standpoint of lost potential. Could that person have contributed? I was watching a program about an individual who was adopted, and when as an adult found out that they'd been adopted, and was very angry about the whole thing, but then began to awaken to the realization that, yeah, okay, I missed out on that great life that my sisters and brothers, her actual biologicals, who she'd been separated from, had. Okay, I missed out on that. But imagine, I would probably not have had the son that she has now, who's doing the kind of work that he's doing. Mm-hmm. And we kind of get a little sidetracked and get, angry and or envious and or vengeful and all of those kinds of things. It's like, you're on the path you're on, and there are no regrets, because you can't go back and you can't undo that. It is what it is. If you want to undo it, come back in another lifetime and do it differently. So I thank the two of you for being with us here on the program. And this has just been a real joy. I hope that you will come back.
Thank you so much. We'd love to.
And if you're ever in the Santa Barbara area, maybe we'll have a chance to get together face to face and have a wonderful interview. Maybe get some beach chairs and go out there and have a nice talk.
That sounds good. Yeah, I'd love it.
Well, before we let you go ahead.
Regards to your wife.
I will pass on your regards. Absolutely. Before I let you go, I do have 3 questions that I ask all of my guests. Now, I probably asked you those 3 questions, actually a set of 3 questions that have sort of changed in 8 years, but I'll ask those in just a moment. But first, I want you, the listener and the viewer, to know that we are here Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. for a special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We are broadcasting those programs, streaming them at richarddugan.com at those times. And the podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations, as well as on YouTube, where you can watch these interviews at the channel Tell Me Your Story with Richard Dugan. Look for the guy with the black hat, which ain't here right now, but you'll know it when you see it, because we have emblazoned across the banner, across the top, this is the decade of perfect vision, where we ask you to spend time going within to listen to that still small voice. We didn't get into that. We should have dived into that a little bit too, in terms of using your intuition as you move, not only as you two move through the process of helping and supporting and facilitating people working through the challenges in their relationships, but as we, as members of those relationships, do the same. But we ask you to do that. Just spend some time, even just a couple of minutes. It doesn't take long. And maybe the more you do it, the longer you'll do it. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing, we would greatly appreciate that. We have a PayPal account. It's for your security as well as for ours. And when you go to send funds that you can support us with, they're going to ask you for an email address. That email address is richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. And do what you can. We will take energetic support as well. And with that, we have, as I like to say, we now move to the lightning round of our game show, where we ask those 3 questions. I'm going to bounce it back and forth. First question will be going to you, Elsbeth. Elsbeth, who is Elsbeth Meuth?
Who is Elsbeth Meuth? I am this German girl grown up in a family of 10, post-war Germany, and then came to the United States all by herself and created a new life. And voila, like the phoenix out of the ashes, found her beloved in her later life.
Very cool. And who is Freddy Weaver?
Freddy Zental Weaver is a tall Black man living in the 21st century America. I loved singing jazz, and I do that at the clubs, and we do soirees here at our institute. I'm a motorcycle enthusiast. I love riding my Harley Davidson on long rides around the country and interviewing friends and people. I am also one of the founders and directors of TantraNova Institute here in Chicago for the last 20 years, where I assist, along with my beloved and wife and partner, Elsbeth, how people and couples and individuals, how to create lasting love and intimacy in their life, relationships, and in their work.
Next question for you, Freddy, is what is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you're doing now?
Make the world a little better.
And oh my goodness. Elsbeth, what is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
Yeah, my vision continues to be bringing deep, deep healing in that sexual, psycho, spiritual beingness that we are, and also heal like generational healing. So healing, and out of the healing, the opportunity to live fully.
And Elsbeth, what is your life's purpose?
I came into this world to promote sexual spiritual healing.
And Freddy, what is your life's purpose?
Live my life.
And so we shall. And I thank the two of you once again for joining us. And I thank you for watching and listening to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we give you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to law.